welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining for today's talk, the rise of AI agents. I'm happy to be here today with Gordian, Gordian Berger. Do you quickly want to introduce yourself?
Yes, gladly. Thank you, David. My name is Gordian Berger. I'm the CTO at Legartis. So as CTO, I basically oversee the AI development architecture at Legartis. I have over 10 years of startup experience. I've built quite a few startups in Germany, but also in the US. And now I'm very excited to have been part of this AI journey, specifically in the legal area at Legartis for past years.
Really exciting to have you here today. Quickly about myself. My name is David. I'm one of the co-founders of Legartis. I have a legal background, worked as a lawyer, and then already 8 years ago, I saw the opportunity to combine my interest in innovation and entrepreneurship with my legal background, went into the legal tech field. We started with AI a long time before ChatGPT and everything else. So I got to experience all the up and downs in the past 8 years. A lot of ups, obviously, and really excited to be here. I'm the Legartis CEO, and so yeah, I'm very much looking forward to today's discussion, Gordian. So, what are we going to do? Artificial intelligence is transforming the legal industry at unprecedented pace, bringing efficiency and innovation to contract analysis, legal research, and workflow automation. In this session, we will explore the latest trends, real-world applications, and developments of AI agents in legal practice. I would encourage all of you to stay engaged. Please ask questions. You can use our Q&A function within Zoom. Take advantage of the opportunity to deepen your understanding and especially how AI agents are shaping the legal AI landscape. Today's agenda is pretty simple. We're going to kick it off with the whole evolution. So what is actually happening? Then we're going to dive into the topic of AI agents specifically. We're going to look at a couple of use cases, so to understand what are the implications on legal AI. And then we're going to show you first how can AI actually be used for contracts today. So a real life example. And most importantly, we're going to give you a preview of what's going to come in the next couple of weeks. And at the very end, we're going to go into a Q&A. All right, Gordian, could you give us a brief overview of what's actually happening or what has happened in the past few years with AI and what does that mean for legal AI?
Yes, I'm going to start with a very small recap starting from end of 2022, start of 2023, which is for AI cycle. Now it seems like a very long time, but I mean, for the common company, it's actually 3 years are probably nothing. But basically the first big jump, and that's what everyone knows, of course, is when ChatGPT got released, and that was around the time end of 2022. A little bit before that, the transformer architecture got detected, and then with ChatGPT, the first large language model came out, and that was a huge jump, technology shift. A lot of new use cases became possible. Also something that we then had to quickly integrate at Legartis because we actually have been going through AI transformations even before that. But basically for the typical user, the big shift was with ChatGPT. And afterwards, let's say 2023, 2024, AI models, of course, did get a lot of improvements. But I think so far we did not see the big, I would say, exponential growth in these AI models. So they got a lot better. We can also see that in benchmarks, but it's not certainly like some Even some AI people said it didn't replace anyone yet. And so it's a linear progress. It's there, but it's not making huge shifts. And that was basically the last few years. But I think what definitely did change is how we use the models. So we can definitely get better results with smaller models and get the same quality, which is also important. It uses less energy, it's cheaper, which also then makes more use cases available. Now there's also, for example, small European models that you can use if you have more data, privacy sensitive data. So a lot of these things around happened. And what also it's now happening, and that started already end of 2024, but it's a big thing in 2025, is basically that these models are now getting integrated better. So that means now a model is able to use, for example, tools, and with these tools, a model can achieve much, much more, and that can then actually, that's something that we can then use, for example, in a legal area, we are able to solve much more tasks. And this is basically then what we call an agent. And yes, so I think let's go to the next slide.
So yeah,
Let's get the evolution then.
yeah. So basically, I'm looking at the example of Legartis. What does that mean very concretely? So when we started in 2017, building legal AI was a long, resource-intensive process. It took us a long time to actually develop one contract type. We started out with a very simple one, as I'd say the majority of providers at that time, with NDAs. And what we did was basically developing the contract type with a lot of resources. And the challenges we were facing was definitely lack of high quality legal training data. The AI models required extensive manual supervision and fine tuning, and in the end, limited multilingual capabilities. Although coming out of Switzerland, it still was a challenge to develop something that wasn't English. So we had really to basically start from scratch. Then that then basically led us to the second phase, what I would call the acceleration phase. We saw some maturity, some efficiency gains. So the expansion was definitely faster. Once one contract actually was developed, scaling to new types became easier. And the trend was really a hybrid AI human workflow. So AI assisted, not replacing, just assisting legal professionals. That was then basically the time up till 2024. And in 2024, we saw the big jump. So scaling with real speed. So AI, and now definitely as well in 2025. So AI is no longer just reviewing contracts, it's negotiating, summarizing, and suggesting revisions. So we see a massive scale up expanding across multiple jurisdictions, languages. We see that the onboarding of new contract types becomes really easy. It's still work, but it becomes a lot easier. And we do see from a technological point of view, and Gordian, you're definitely going to elaborate on that a bit more. It's so fine-tuned small LLMs and RAG in combination, so more precise legal insights, AI that adapts to company-specific legal policies. So it's there is the possibility to really individualize everything. So it's not just the standard contracts where you say you need dozens or even hundreds of documents that you review or analyze. It really starts to make sense even for smaller batches. So legal AI moves from just being in an assistant role to actually really becoming an active co-pilot in legal workflows. So in the end, That's how we see then as well Legartis. Legartis becomes really the collaborative Swiss Army knife for legal work. But enough about the evolution. Let's dive into the AI agents and general trends. Gordian, what will happen now in 2025, or has already happened? Could you introduce our audience a bit into that age of AI agents? What is that, and give an overview of further LLM trends they should be aware of?
Yes. So before we dive into the outlook, let's first actually look into what an AI agent is and how it compares to what we had before. So what I was mentioning before, large language models basically did get better, but not much more, and now they should have more tools. So what's the difference? A large language model usually was trained by a huge amount of data, and that can be a lot. It could even be the whole public internet, for example. So technically, it has a lot of knowledge, it has a lot of data, but the downside is, of course, the data changes every day. There's new news every day, regulation changes every day, and the changes are so much that even just one day later, you're already not up to date. That's one thing. And of course, also the model doesn't know what you're doing in your company. It doesn't have the insider knowledge. So that can also not provide good results. So basically, before, the large language model only had training data and also what the user gave it as information. And of course, giving it a lot of information is kind of difficult. It takes time and doesn't make it that useful in many scenarios. So what is an agent? Basically, an agent is the way to solve this. So an agent is basically a large language model, but with a big tool set so that it can actually solve the tasks. So usually an agent has a certain task or role that they are working on. So for example, could be being a customer success bot. It could be someone to review contracts. It's usually like a very narrow task, which is complicated, but very specific. And then to make that agent actually be able to do things, it gets tools. So for example, an agent can on its own then access an API. So for example, if you would ask the agent about the current weather, if it's maybe your general weather agent, it will then fetch the latest weather data from an API that has it available, and then it can tell you that. And that's simply, that might not be a very cool use case, but that was not possible before because, of course, the training data did not have the current day information there. And this data or API can be anything that is available as an API. Basically, you could also give access to an agent. It could also be, of course, your email. It could read your emails. It could send emails. You basically can give it access to it as well. It could also be a search. And if you want to go crazy, it could also, of course, be another language model that has a specific use case. Maybe you might have a very generic large language model, which is asking for help for a legal specific language model, and then they can work together. Another big factor, of course, is also not just tools, but also long-term memory. So of course, it's nice to have many chats with ChatGPT, but of course, it gets much more interesting if it actually remembers the past messages and also maybe key facts about you. And this can be then related, for example, for anything that an agent is responsible for. But basically, it will learn you over time. So maybe if it's a travel agent, it will remember your past questions. It remember that you told it. So maybe I don't like beaches, I prefer mountains. So it will also know that for future, of course, this can also be useful for legal or compliance related memory. But basically, it's not just a set of training data anymore. And finally, what is also, of course, interesting is the feedback loop. So if you have an agent, you can also then let it talk with other agents. You can let it improve itself. And that, of course, even if a large language model, which the agent is built on, did not increase that much, the things that we can do got much more advanced. And this is basically what an agent is.
So, Gordian, could you please give some more details on the future trends with AI agents. So what does that mean when agents control or manage other models?
Yes, I think just to repeat what I've already said, so it's maybe already a current trend since we already almost at half of a year, but basically what we definitely see is agents being responsible for one task, as mentioned, and they usually excel at this task. So usually we already see basically, for example, one agent for research, one could be for drafting, and one for negotiation, and then there's maybe an agent that manages all of them. And what we've already also see is a trend is basically less prompting. I think 1 or 2 years ago, we basically even had companies saying we need prompt engineers, actually hiring for a role. I think this completely disappeared. I will also come back to it later because we also have resolved at Legartis, but basically prompting will not be, will be less necessary going forward. What is also, I think, when we originally said that transparency, traceability, this is still a very big topic. I think it was a big topic before, but now it seems basically best practice or standard that also the agent actually verifies its source. So before, with only its training data, this was hard to do. But now, since the agent can also basically take outside context, it can basically also verify itself and show the user how it came to a certain conclusion. And this might actually not be related to agents, but also some trends that we see. So this goes more to solution providers such as us in the legal tech area. We providers need to be able to basically switch models very fast. I mean, just 4 days ago, Claude came in, but in the next week there'll be another model, and we basically have to keep up. So you need to be able to switch large language models very quickly, test it for the use case that you have with your own benchmarks, because one model might be good at it, another might not. This is changing every month, so you have to keep up. And also what's becoming more and more realistic is the on-premise approach. For very sensitive data, you can already achieve much more with smaller models without paying hundreds of thousands for GPUs. So this is definitely becoming more and more realistic now.
So when it comes to use cases for AI agents, Gordian, where would you see real practical usage for it?
Yes, a real practical use case. So what could be an interesting use case is, for example, a legal research agent. Let's say a lawyer is preparing for a case. You need relevant information. You let an agent search for it. Could be research database, could be legal databases, but the agent if needs access to it. And then the agent will at least search for it and prepare it in a format that the lawyer can easily review it. And this is also something an agent can do. It's this human in the loop feature. Basically, the agent first searches, then shows it, and then the user can make changes, approve it, and then the agent might do another search based on the feedback. And of course, with memory and learnings can also learn how the user wants the search done and improve on that as well. So definitely one interesting use case. There's probably already agents doing that. Contract negotiation, redlining agents, also very interesting, also something what we are looking into. So basically, if your typical process, of course, during contract review is also the negotiation step. If you have give a model the context of both companies and you know where both companies align and where they don't align, you can definitely speed up this process, especially if you also think about the human in the loop here, so that you speed up the negotiation phase between two parties. The compliance case, of course, also very interesting. This could be an example, for example, where multiple agents work together. You might have one agent that is basically looking for regulatory changes. When it sees actually changes in regulatory, it basically passes this information to a contract review agent, such as Legartis, and this agent will then go through all your contracts, look at what regulatory changes might apply, and prompt the user for action where they see it. And this definitely speeds up the typical review, and also, of course, reduces the risks in, I would say, changing in environments where regulatory things change a lot.
So yeah, I that definitely raises a couple of questions. The first one, when it comes to the negotiation, so what do you think? How long will it actually take until two agents really negotiate a contract autonomously?
This is very hard to predict, especially in the current environment, I guess. And I would say also depends on the contract, but I think we can see, I would say probably easy contracts could be maybe an NDA. I think we could see that already in 2 years, where both companies have clearly aligned requirements, where agents could just go ahead and go for it.
That makes it really interesting. And obviously, I guess you would agree that the use cases you now here describe, that's totally doable to find that in one platform, so by one provider. But that basically then brings me to the questions that in terms of costs, do you see a significant drop in internal costs? So to be a bit provocative, let's say you can actually find a platform like this. Will juniors be in the future just replaced by AI agents?
That's quite a few questions. One, I would say we definitely will see more output using the same people. So I think doesn't matter if it's a junior or senior, but I think the expected output will be much higher since you can, or you will be able to do much more with AI. At the same time, of course, we see more regulations, so there will be more work. So I think that might cancel out somewhat, but definitely the output should be more. And same goes for juniors. I think it will be easier to also learn or being onboarded now, since the agent will support you in many cases. You don't have to be, you don't have to start from scratch from empty documents. But at the same time, it will be more difficult because you will not be able to judge the agent as maybe a senior could do. So it will, for the junior, it will be very difficult to see what is right and what is wrong. And I think where the seniors will have an edge. So that's something we might, or you have to be careful in the future when just letting juniors use AI.
So basically that then raises the question, how do you become a senior? But I think that's for another webinar. All right. Thank you very much, Gordian. So basically, that brings us to the different stages along the life cycle. So let's have quickly a look at what AI can already do today. We're gonna go from here then directly into our demo, where we're gonna give you a sneak peek what's really happening already today. So when looking at the life cycle of a contract, there's a lot possible. So obviously drafting, yes, there are tools that already exist that support you in drafting. We all have seen, or a lot of us have seen, the demos by even big players such as Microsoft, where a contract is being generated by AI. Then that brings us obviously to the next stage of reviewing, negotiating, and finally then the approval of a contract. There, providers like Legartis support users in dealing with not only your own draft, but the amended draft by counterparty or even a third-party draft. That then brings us to signing the contract, which not that much of AI is actually needed. But once the contract is signed, there's again a lot of use cases presenting themselves, such as in the context of a compliance-related project or due diligence in M&A, or even in the context of really management, contract management, risk management, or know-how management, and the reporting linked to that. All of that definitely possible with the support of AI. So leaving all leaving the life cycle, let's dive into one real life use case, and we're going to kick that off with the review of a not yet signed contract. What I'd like to show you briefly is how we at Legartis deal with third-party drafts. Let's assume I just received this draft, GTC, 8 pages, 2 columns. Definitely the thing I want to do, let's say 7 o'clock at night, after a long day of meetings, potentially negotiations, and other tasks that were on my plate. So instead of just reading that contract line by line, what I can do is actually I can use the support of Legartis. I open Microsoft Word, I open the add-in, the Legartis add-in, I select now the contract type, in this case, general terms and conditions. I continue and I select a playbook. A playbook is basically are my negotiation rules, so my policies that we defined as a company. What do we accept? What is acceptable? What is unacceptable? What's risky? What are potentially what is standard wording, and so on. And I let Legartis now analyze that contract. What happens is basically it runs a text analysis, so it looks at the language. Obviously, Legartis functions multilingual. It then goes into the clause, then classifies every single sentence, and as a last step, it then basically looks into the text and searches for further information, compares the whole text analysis result with my playbook, so my company policies, and after a couple of seconds, I receive this result telling me, well, there is one clause unacceptable, one need correction, and the rest was auto-approved. And now let's dive into the actual review. Legartis was designed to actually support not only lawyers, but as well unexperienced professionals or professionals that definitely not deal with contracts on a daily basis, typically seen in, for example, procurement teams or sales teams. And what you can do is either you can just follow the open tasks or you can follow the whole text and use the highlighting. I'll now start with the first open task. I see that contractual penalty is there. It tells me it's unacceptable. It even tells me what is a contractual penalty. And then I get the instruction. The instruction. So what do I need to do? In this case, I need to delete it because it doesn't comply with my company policies. I can then click on the sentence and I'm being guided automatically to the respective sentence. I can even activate track changes and simply delete it from the text. What happens now is I can see that the reanalysis starts automatically and after a couple of seconds, everything is locked in my history. So there is an audit trail in place. Let's go to a second example, one that has been already completed, auto-approved. So we see here jurisdiction court. We can see that there was a company requirement telling me, hey, I only accept jurisdiction court in Switzerland, Germany, or France. It recognized the sentence. So it basically tells me as well where is the source of Legartis auto-approving this. We can see that it found Zurich, extracted Zurich, and obviously it understood that Zurich is in Switzerland, and therefore it auto-approved that task. Moving on to a next open task, I can now scroll up here. I can see that there's a lot of green. There's some red here. There's some red there. And let's go in here. We can see that there is force majeure. I have two requirements for force majeure. One stating that force majeure needs to include natural disasters, and the other that it needs to include alien invasions. The second one was is fulfilled. Not surprising. I even get the explanation why this is so. So here it's stating force majeure is mentioned with lightning strike, which is a natural disaster. This implies natural disasters are included in force majeure. And not that surprising is that alien invasions wasn't found, again with the explanation. And what I get here is even a correction that was generated by the AI. So how to actually now amend the contract. What I can do is simply click here. It changes the text. It runs the reanalysis, and after a couple of seconds, we will see that this will change from red to green, and we can see now that both are fulfilled. Let's go to the last example. We can see here again, so notification period needs to be no longer than 1 week. We have 2 weeks in the text. I again get the explanation, and I simply can apply corrections. Text changes, is being amended automatically, and after a couple of seconds, this will change from red to green. And we're done. This is just one way to actually use the Legartis for review. We do have as well a chatbot in there, but that's for another time. What I want to show you quickly is as well a second use case. So Legartis can't only be used for before the signature, it can as well be used for the analysis of a lot of contracts, so potentially after the signature of a contract. I can simply either import via an API contracts, or I can upload contracts to Legartis. Let me do this now. So we can see, I'll upload those. Select just that, and I upload the contracts. What's happening, it's uploading, and it's going to run the analysis. And what I then can do is either I can look into a single contract. I can see that there is an analysis, so I can really look at every single sentence. I can, as we've seen it in Microsoft Word, I could now go from clause to clause or from task to task, or I can look at extracted information. And with that extracted information, one can actually do stuff. Either you can go into a dashboard and, for example, look at a compliance dashboard. So from a compliance standpoint, you've just defined in a playbook what is actually acceptable. Let's say you want to find out there was a change in legislation, and you want to understand, are you still in compliance in your contract with the law? That's one option, or you can actually run a risk of my policy. So really get an overview. How does that look? What does that look like? Or what you could do as well is, let's say senior management wants to understand, do we have a certain risk when it comes to certain jurisdictions? So show me governing law over all my contracts. And I can have that either shown in a graph or let's say in a map. So as long as you actually understand that the AI works, so your database is actually of high quality, you can do whatever you wish to do. And that then brings me basically now to you, Gordian. So we're talking about AI agents, and we're talking about quality of AI. So we focus today on the technological side of our legal AI. Could you maybe run us through the prompting area, the prompt library of what Legartis has to offer?
Yes, let me gladly do that. I'll share my screen. All right, you should be able to see the prompt library now. Is that right? Okay, just to give you also some background of, before I tell you what we can actually see here, let me get you some background of how Legartis actually works. So what David has showed you before is basically you could call it a contract review agent. So that is basic, or that agent. It doesn't even have to be a chatbot like you saw. It could also be something that interacts with you and Word, and also with your guidelines. And in that case, it's really an agent that is relevant to reviewing a contract. But one big issue is, or also one big challenge that we are solving for our customers is, what do we actually want to check in contracts? And typically that we used to be done via prompting. So customers would define their own playbooks and set the guidelines via prompts in our
Gordian,
company. Yep.
can you make the window a bit bigger?
Does it look better? I cannot see my screen. Now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
Thank you very
thanks.
much.
So where was I? Basically, yes. We had, and also as mentioned before, you had to do a lot of prompting. So let's say you wanted to check 40 issues in your contract, or you want to check 40 rules, you had to prompt 40 points. And prompting, as we've known it before in the past, took a lot of time to get the AI model understand it right. So what has changed? So what we have now built in the backend, it's again, it's not a chatbot, so it doesn't look so fancy, but the technology behind this is quite tricky. So basically, the users will still define the requirements, what they want to check, but we now have an agent that actually prompts them. So the new flows basically as follows: the user, and this is also what you see here, defines what they want to check in a contract. So for example, let's take an NDA. I want to check maybe a data breach. I want to check disclosure to authorities, where I also have a requirement that I want to check. And I just enter this requirement in the background. There will be an agent for us that basically will prompt or get you the correct prompt for the right model to solve that use case. And then it will also give you a score, and that's the next important thing. It will also give you a score how good it is. And this is also very important, especially with agents, because the more AI we use, the harder it is to, of course, verify results. And yes, there are a lot of benchmarks outside, but in the end, are these benchmarks relevant for your personal use case? Maybe, maybe not. So what we have built here is basically a prompt library that actually benchmarks or creates benchmarks for your own company and your own requirement. So this is really a benchmark, for example, on how good this requirement works across contracts. And this is for all the benchmarks. And this is kind of a technical view that basically is used, for example, by customers, but also by our legal engineers, which have a law background, to then see what the agent has done. So let me go inside, for example, requirement. It looks a bit technical because it's an internal tool, but let me quickly explain what it does. So basically, we have a definition, a legal definition: disclosure to authorities shall be allowed, if required by law, a person to judicial action. So I'm a tech guy, I'm not a legal guy, but I think this is quite probably more of a simple legal requirement, but this is something we want to basically check in our NDAs. Here you can see some Legartis internal settings of which model we can use, because we are model agnostic. And then you can also see the prompt here. And this prompt was basically defined by an agent. So the agent took the original customer requirement and created a prompt out of it to make it work and also test it. And now, of course, what we are then going to do is we still want to have this human in the loop feedback, because AI is doing AI. It's not going to be 100% correct, but it's there to save you work. And what you basically get then is an overview. You can actually check the benchmark yourself and see, as a lawyer or someone who understands this requirement, basically on the left side, you would see the contract of what is expected, and on the right side, what the AI found. So basically what you can imagine, we have a selection here of 10 actual contracts in our database. On the left side with text that is expected, and this text was curated also by an agent, but also partially by a human. And on the right side, we can see how the current prompt that our AI agent developed works. So the AI agent will tell you what text it found, and also what conclusion it had, and also why it came to that conclusion. And this is also one way, basically, where I then can see how good the AI agent understood my actual requirement, and also how it came to a conclusion. And we can do this basically for every one of our guidelines. If it's 100, we let an AI agent prompt for 100 guidelines. And when, let's say, the score is bad for 10 of them, a human or maybe a lawyer who has much more in-depth now, especially for more complex legal requirements, they can go inside and then do the remaining work. And then the agent will then do another loop after they have gained the feedback of the user. But this is basically where it's going. And of course, there is much more to come. We're also planning to build a more chat-like experience for this. Right now, it's a lot of fancy technology in the backend, but of course, it also needs to be more visible to the user.
I think that's a perfect point. This looks now very technical, and when you say we plan to actually develop a chat-like interaction to actually build playbooks, to build what you call here checkpoints or data points, then that's actually not that far ahead. And let me share my screen again. Can you see this? Not yet. No.
No, yes.
Perfect. So yeah, Gordian, that basically brings us really to the question. So we're currently not planning, we're actually implementing the AI agent technology for our users. But what does that mean now? Me as a user, I'm in charge of a large legal department, and I now want to basically start. And I've heard from a lot of colleagues, well, these solutions, they really work, but building playbooks is so difficult, and it takes a lot of time. And but as I can tell from what you just said, there's something changing.
Yes, I mean, you're totally right. And I mean, this is also the feedback we get from our current customers who are usually legal departments. So yes, they say, hey, we are quite happy with your contract review agent, but setting up these playbooks just takes too much time. Also, sometimes we have contracts, we don't have that big volume, so it doesn't justify setting up all these guidelines. And this is basically right now the number one pain point we have here, and we are basically solving this. So what we are doing is we're building, it's almost done. We're building an AI agent that actually helps customers during onboarding. It's like an onboarding playbook AI agent, and that playbook agent basically guides the user from start to end. So it will be, and this is basically the best combination. You will have an AI agent, and as a lawyer, you will basically get guided through the whole journey. And then playbook creation should take you then maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes, but compared to a few weeks before, this is like a huge improvement. And then it just takes you, let's say, 30 minutes to 1 hour of setting it up together with an AI agent. And you will have a full playbook that you can roll out to your own users and review all your contracts with.
And I think that's not it. So it's not only just creating the playbook, but it's actually you can really steer the quality. So it's transparent. You do have, for every checkpoint, you do have a test set in place. So we continue our journey of delivering AI that is to some extent or it used to be pre-trained, now it's pre-tested, correct?
Yes, that's a very good point. And we also sometimes forget that the playbook is a living thing. So it's not just a one-time thing you set up and then you leave it, but it's also, of course, there's maybe something coming up. Quality does, you still want to improve it continuously. AI is definitely not 100% perfect. So also that means the playbook is not 100% perfect. Maybe in the first iteration, there was a mistake. So but definitely the agent will also continuously monitor it, learn from it, and adjust it, or make basically suggestions. But also, of course, regulatory changes or changes in the industry might be a trigger to change your playbook. And then, of course, would be nice if the agent will give you suggestions so that you can actually adjust your playbook without that much effort going forward. And of course, all of that we want to have tested with the typical transparency and verification.
Yeah, as you probably can tell, I'm super excited about this because that really brings us now to a stage where a lot is possible. One can analyze work with unlimited contract types. You're not just limited to the standard contract types where it makes sense to set up a playbook because you have hundreds of contracts to be reviewed or analyzed. It starts to make sense even for a couple of documents. It automates the onboarding. It brings us then to the stage where you can use Legartis really as an AI assistant. So super excited. And to our audience, you only have to wait a couple of weeks, and we're going to communicate a lot more in that regard. So stay tuned. Very well. Looking at the time, before we actually go into the Q&A, one last bit. So we're actually doing something we've never done before at Legartis. So we want to offer you something really special today. We'd like to invite you to join us for the next AI Wave. We offer exclusively just for this webinar, for all the participants here, a 6-month Legartis license for free. Comes with basically some requirements, but more about that. Scan the QR code, book a meeting now, and get in touch with us. We're really looking forward. We're excited to take up the discussion with you and to see you actually start using Legartis quite soon. All right. That brings us now to the Q&A. So we have a couple of questions here in the Q&A. Gordian, I'm just gonna basically start with the first one. So are already legal departments in big companies using agents in their daily work?
Yes, I mean, basically you could say we know from experience, since most of our customers are legal departments in bigger companies. And basically, it's also maybe one of the benefits. I mean, we've been there for 7 years already. So we definitely did not start with agents, and now we just have agents. So we are there to continuously monitor also the technology changes and bring it live so that customers can actually use it. And of course, this takes time. I mean, you need to adopt also processes on the customer sides. But yes, we are first movers. It's taking time, but they are getting started.
All right. Now we get to a question from Matthias, which is a bit going back to the crystal ball reading, or just looking into the future. So if agents negotiate contracts, which agent wins? Is the better trained one? How do I ensure that my agent is the best trained?
Oh, it's a very tricky one. I would say also depends how good the agent is instructed to know how to negotiate your requirements, what's very important for you, what you should not allow. So I think the process of the agent is going to be very important, and also that it's tested based on your own requirements. So I think that's you probably need some way to verify that your agent definitely works. And if you cannot verify it, then of course I would probably not let it do it on its own, but still have a look over it.
All right. That then brings us to the next question. What type of digital signature are used? Can the agent also use qualified electronic signatures?
Yes, that's what we basically giving it a tool. So the agent itself technically doesn't have or it cannot create digital signatures, but of course you could integrate, for example, DocuSign, or you could give it access to DocuSign, and then it would be able to initiate a digital process. That would be, for example, one way.
Then a question I would assume you already answered when you described a bit how the prompt library works and what we're doing and developing at the moment. Did you also use AI to create the playbook? Short answer is yes.
Yes, that's actually very new. So I would say we've just started doing that in the past months. And the exciting thing is that we are going to release this feature to the users as well. Right now, it's something we internally have to do, but very soon we are going to announce that, and the user will be able to do it as well.
The next one is a really important one. How detailed are the instructions you need to give the agent? Or can you upload the company policies and have AI analyze them against the contract, or do you need to include that all in the playbook?
This is a very good question, and yes, as detailed as possible. And this is why, and detailed as possible is a lot of work, and this is exactly why we have built this agent basically and made it a two-step process. So what you will be able to do is you can upload your company policy, and the AI agent playbook builder will actually create a playbook for you. And this agent will basically go through a few steps, step-by-step process, and will basically only be happy if you have the detailed instructions. And then you will have a very good playbook based on your policies that the contract review agent then can use. And this is basically the teamwork of you and as a user and the agents.
That brings us then to the next question. Please clarify the process for linking projects for review and internal company contracts regulation. Would it be advisable to download and update them in some way?
I'm not 100% sure if I got.
So I can actually take that question. So for one, so step one, basically when you start a contract review, you do select the playbook. So to speak, your company policies. It is totally possible that you could have for one contract type multiple playbooks. So let's say for certain sectors or certain jurisdictions, you could have different playbooks. So in the contract reviewing process, you actually do that. When it then comes to the keeping the playbooks up to date, so today you do this directly in the platform, so you don't need to download anything. And actually, as we look into the second half of 2025, I do know that this is going to happen. At least the suggestion how to amend a playbook is going to happen automatically. Again, using AI based on the one hand, your behavior, so how you actually reviewed, for example, your contracts or outside data. That then brings us to the next question. What type of information and data do you usually need to feed into the system so that it can correctly review your contracts to be in line with the applicable laws and company policies, including contracts governed by various laws, as it is often the case in multinational corporations? Yeah, so I believe I just answered that question. Then can you give insight into your license structure and costs? I'm going to give you the typical lawyer answer, so it all depends. But basically, it depends on the number of users, obviously the use cases you want to cover. So for example, then the number of contracts you actually want to review, or what's the usage. So when it comes to data points, what's there, the spectrum. And last but not least, the contract types as well that go into. So it's a combination of all those factors. In the case of very industry-specific contracts, not only legal, can the AI be trained with knowledge of industry-specific clauses, escalations, and so on? And if so, it would always have to be updated with the latest trends. Gordian, do you want to take that?
It's a mix. I mean, basically what we do is a combination. So yes, you can train or fine-tune it, but this is also a thing you can also add this knowledge as a tool later on to the model. This makes it more flexible because it's very expensive to train models and it's very hard to stay up to date. So what we rather do is when we give a model the necessary know-how and the tools of these industry-specific clauses, and that works quite well.
All right. Then the next question: are these playbooks automatically are these automatically created playbooks human readable as well, or will they be optimized for AI use cases and therefore difficult to read and review manually by human? Excellent question. Gordian, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Yes, definitely human readable. And I think this is very important because it's still the real value comes from the final 10% the human gives his input to the AI. So you need to be able to at least see it and also verify how the AI came to the conclusion. Since there could also be a misunderstanding by the AI of what it thinks you want to check. Sometimes it's not better AI quality, but misunderstanding. So I think it's very important that human and AI can interact with each other.
And maybe let me add here, so not only readable for people with a technical background, but as well really with a legal background. So if you do have the legal know-how, the legal background, you should be able to actually adjust and optimize a playbook that was created by AI. Then going to the next question, as I understood correctly, Legartis is mainly focused on the negotiation review phase of contracting. Will you expand the tool in future also on the other phases of contracting, so on the storage and getting reports based on the contracts that are stored, so a full CLM tool? So let me be precise. We are already there. So what I showed you in the second use case, that's exactly the analysis of already signed contracts. So when you store contracts, being it in or outside of Legartis and getting reports there. And the reports then could be in the context of a specific project, being a compliance related, a due diligence, or just in general when it comes to getting reports of everything that is in your contract management. Legartis itself is today not a full-fledged CLM. We're getting there, but at the same time, we're really focusing on everything that AI has actually to offer. So we believe that there's the big value. But it can't, the Legartis AI, and especially with what we're just going to release within the next month, this is basically usable for the full life cycle of a contract. Anything that I forgot, Gordian?
No.
No? Okay. So let's continue with the next question. How exactly does the AI compare contractual terms? How large is the margin of interpretation? How much of it is the AI's own interpretation? Does it understand what the clause mean? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So yes, the AI can understand what the clause mean. And then that's basically how much margin of interpretation is there. That really depends technically even on clause by clause level. And exactly this is why we have built the prompt library so that you can, for your own clauses, actually measure this margin of interpretation. So in the end, you will get a score for each clause, and then it could, for example, say 0.95 means there's still a 5% error rate potentially for that clause. Maybe for now on is 2%, maybe for a very difficult one, it's over 10% error rate. So the important part is definitely that you as a user also get the insight for each of your clauses, and especially since there's a lot of difference between clauses.
All right. Gordian, thank you very much for today's session. Looking at the time, we really want to end on time. So if your questions haven't been answered just yet, we'll aim to get back to you in writing. For all that of you who have participated so nicely during today's session, please reach out to us. If you have more questions or you simply want to kick off a collaboration, here are our contacts. I'm very much looking forward to speaking with you when it comes to the next webinar that is already planned. There are webinars lined up for June. For the time being, I wish you all a wonderful lunch and a wonderful afternoon. Looking forward to speaking again. To you, Gordian, thank you very much for today's discussion. It was a pleasure.
Thank you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.